For some time now, Xbox Live Arcade has been a place to get some high-profile and often very expensive shooters for a very affordable price. With original Dreamcast and PS2 copies selling for over $70, being able to pick up Warashi's Triggerheart Exelica for a mere $10, in HD no less, is a very easy and affordable way for new players and curious ones alike to get into the bullet hell subgenre. And of course, as most shooter fans will agree, being able to get a decent previously import-only game without breaking the bank is always a good thing. I'll be the first to admit that when I first played this game, I wasn't especially impressed. Because you can essentially credit feed your way to the end, Triggerheart Exelica came off as extremely easy. And with only 5 short stages, it didn't hold my interest very long at first. But like the classic Transformer toys of yesteryear, there's definitely more than meets the eye to this game. For first-time players that aren't especially familiar with the intricacies of bullet hell shooters, Triggerheart Exelica might come off as a very short, very simple game. The controls are as you might expect. The left analog stick or the D-pad will move you in the desired direction, the A button shoots your main cannon, and the B button fires an anchor, more on that later. In a pinch, the R trigger will also unleash a screen-clearing bomb, which eradicates all enemies on screen and all enemy bullets. Now some of you out there might just be content with blasting everything on screen and getting from point A to point B until the final boss is defeated. But in Triggerheart Exelica, that would be missing the forest for the trees. In fact, I'd go so far to say as to use the cannon as little as possible would usually get you the highest score, and that's where the anchor comes in. You can capture airborne enemies by shooting it with your anchor. Once an enemy is captured in this manner, you can then swing it around and unleash it at whatever angle you choose. As if that weren't enough, if the enemy's big enough, you can continue to swing it around while it's still attached into other enemies like a giant club. Different enemies can withstand different amounts of abuse, so eventually they will be destroyed, but so long as they are still attached, you can wreak massive amounts of damage in this manner. As fun as this is, capturing enemies is only relegated to airborne ones. Firing your anchor into a land-based enemy or a boss will just make it stick in place. While the anchor is stuck though, you can still fire a line of shots down the anchor and into the enemy that it's stuck into. In the case of bosses though, there are usually pieces of the boss that will be able to be captured and flung into the boss itself, which is really handy. And of course, that means more medals for you. Typically these medals are automatically collected, they'll be sucked right into your character. But if your fire button is being used at the same time, they'll often just kinda hang on screen until they eventually scroll off. While this is happening, they'll also grow in size. Using this technique, along with your anchor attack, can give you a massive medal count, which in turn will give you a huge score at the end of the level. But that's if you don't get hit. When you lose a life, you'll also lose a significant amount of your medals, so perfecting your technique and making it through to the end of the stage without getting hit is key. Believe it or not, these medals serve more purpose than just boosting your score at the end of the stage. Depending how many medals you have when you take on the stage's boss will determine how many forms you go through. And if you can somehow amass over 3,000 medals by the time you finish certain stages bosses, a secret boss can be fought. Fighting this secret boss is key to getting the best ending in the game, so once again, perfecting your medal grabbing techniques and making it through the level without getting hit is key. How fast you can defeat each form during any given boss will also give you a special bonus in the middle of the fight. In fact, the boss fights themselves tend to be where most of your score will come from. Finally, at the very end of the stage, when the bonuses are all tallied up, not only do you get a medal bonus, but a weight bonus as well. The weight bonus is determined by how many enemies you capture and how large they are. So the more enemies you capture, the bigger they are, the higher your score. You also get a rather sizable bonus for the amount of lives you have left and how many bombs you've got in your stock. Taking all of this into consideration, a skilled player can usually get a bonus of about 2 million points at the end of any given level. And being able to score in so many ways really does play into Exelica's true strength. On the presentation front, Triggerheart Exelica is pretty strong. Originally released in the arcades on Naomi hardware and subsequently on the Dreamcast, the Xbox Live Arcade version ups the ante by making all of the 3D edges very smooth. However, since this is pretty much a Dreamcast game, the models themselves are fairly robotic, and really don't offer very much in the line of fluid movement, at least as far as the characters themselves are concerned. Additionally, the Xbox Live Arcade version also excels in the sound department as well. The arranged version of this soundtrack outshines the Dreamcast and arcade version by a mile. You also have the option of rotating the screen 90 degrees either to the left or the right, so that if you have a vertical monitor you can get the original arcade aspect ratio. That way you can get the full experience without the sidebars. And what would any shoot 'em up be without difficulty options? You've mostly seen the easy mode in this video, but there's also a normal difficulty and a hard difficulty for seasoned veterans. But what really makes this version of Triggerheart Exelica better than any other is the online ranking and achievements. To get all of the achievements in this game, you really have to have a firm grasp on everything the game has to offer. But in doing so, you'll get really good at this game, and in turn have bragging rights on the leaderboards. It's a pretty good competition piece given all of the scoring mechanics in place. So who knows, maybe there will be a bullet heaven competition someday. So when it all comes down to it, just how does this Xbox Live Arcade downloadable title stack up? Let's take a look. So is 800 Microsoft points really worth it for Triggerheart Exelica? Some might think it's inferior to the PS2 version because of its lack of story elements and faintier as a playable character, but I think the Xbox Live Arcade version is still the best one. With the ability to intuitively throw enemies into other enemies and to weave through bullets, the control is very good. For die-hard purists, manual swing control is also available. No matter how you look at it, it feels just right. On the length side of things, the stages are fairly short, and with only 5 stages, it's not going to last especially long. But on the challenge side, especially on hard mode, there's more than enough here to work through, and it takes quite a bit of time to perfect the techniques you'll need to get the highest score. On the visual end of things, since it is a Dreamcast game after all, it's not especially pretty to look at. The character models are also quite robotic. However, being that it's running on the Xbox 360, all of the edges on the 3D models are nice and smooth, so it balances out. The character designs might be a little off-putting to some though. On the sound front, the arranged soundtrack for Triggerheart Exelica that would later make its way to the enhanced PS2 version really stands out quite a bit, and it matches the on-screen action perfectly. That being the case, I really wouldn't bother with the original soundtrack at all. It doesn't measure up. Finally, on the ingenuity front, despite being such a short game, having so many scoring mechanics in play all at once, and having so much to take into consideration to get that high score, really sets this one apart from a lot of other shooters out there. Given that the PS2 version sells for as little as $72, and with Dreamcast copies going complete for over $150, for a mere $10, this is well worth your time and money. Thanks to the Xbox Live Arcade leaderboards, it'll likely keep you coming back for more. With that being said, Triggerheart Exelica comes very highly recommended.